Well, welcome everyone to Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game. I'm your host, Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and money color commentator. On today's show, gathering the right information can generate serious savings. Part 5 in our series, most policy reviews end in money saved, with nationally recognized policy review expert Bob Senske. Now, of course, Bob, we're in segment 5. We're talking about life insurance specific. You should have all your policies reviewed. Property, casualty, your personal umbrella policies, your renters, your specialty items like your RVs, your boats on the weekend. All that needs to be reviewed on an annual basis. Things are really liquid in the insurance market, and you need to find out. But nowhere is this more true than life insurance itself. Now, when we talk about it, I need to see some things so I can make a good weight. Your first thing you always talk about is get an in-force ledger. I bet you that most of our clients and people watching our show right now don't even know what that is. What is that?
The in-force ledger, what it does is it takes time into account. Your annual statement may show you what your original crediting rate was and your death benefit and the premium you're paying, but the in-force illustration will show us how long your policy will last from today. And that's really important because if you're in trouble, your annual statement's not really going to tell you that if you've got a lapse pending.
Mm-hmm. Well, think about this. Now, some people keep their original proposals, some people don't.
Right.
If you just happen to have it, Bob's going to take that original proposal and he's going to put it up against this in-force ledger. This is what they said would happen.
Yes.
This is what is happening. Remember, they could be like day and night. But without that, I need to compare them. So when you have to give authorities for Bob and his team to go out and get that so that they can compare what you originally received against what is actually happening. And believe you me, it doesn't happen too often that they're the same.
No, and a lot of people say, "Oh, I'll dig up my annual statement for you," and I go, "Well, no, I need more than that," and that's why the in-force is critical.
Yeah, all the annual statements that you get every year, and you should keep it, put it in your file. It's just a summary statement. But it doesn't show me the mechanics. It doesn't show me what's going on inside. That's why the in-force ledger is that much more valuable. Another thing that you may want to think about is when I'm getting my in-force ledger, you're able to make some modifications. You don't have to make exactly what you were proposed at the original time that you issued the policy. You can say, oh, I think I want more death benefit. My events have changed. Oh, I don't need as much. I could reduce that death benefit. The kids aren't home anymore.
Yes, and you're talking about case design, and we can't do that unless we have the in-force. And all the more reason why we can make a more suitable recommendation.
Bob, you just brought up a big thing here because I think a lot of people don't attach policy review with case design. They're just saying, oh, I'm just here to save money. And that's true. That's the main issue of why we're even doing this all week, because we're trying to help consumers save money. But at the same time, there's design issues here, not only for the policy, but the strategy. Why did I even buy this policy in the first place? You know, why did I feel like I needed coverage? I mean, the most fundamental point of all. And remember, life insurance and property casualty, all these different policies are defensive postures for financial planning.
Yes.
This is our defensive mode. And so when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at my annual statement's good, but it only gives me summary. It doesn't give me everything I need to know. And the other thing is, I want to be able to look at, hey, how am I doing? Bob might come back and say, well, based on what you told me, you may need to add some on, and we'll show you an economic way to do that. So I've seen many times a review ends in, well, before we do the final review, anything change in your life events? Anything change for the reason why you actually wrote the policy in the first place? All those really matter.
Absolutely, and we'll have several options for you from that in-force. That's why that document is so important, and why our web-based platform really just facilitates the authorization of the in-force. But as you'll explain, there's more to that. There's the Part B that we need more information than that.
Well, let's talk about that. You know, everybody, you should. I'm just going to have to go on a little bit of a, chastisement statement here by your host, Steve Savant. You need to keep your policies in a safe and dry place, number one. You just need. It can be in your bank safety deposit. It can be in your own safety deposit box at home. It can be in a metal container that'll survive the fire. I've just been through this. 35 years in the business. I've just seen it all. So we want to be able to contain it. So you have your original. If you say, Steve, I can't find it, some carriers charge, some don't. You should just say, oh, I want my policy. I can't find it. I need another policy. Send it to me. So if you can't find it, always ask for your policy and have it right there. And some of them now are electronic, so they could shoot that to you in the same day on an email. You want to have your policy there. But why do we care about it? What's so important about having your policy? What are you going to look for when you get there?
Well, you see the Part B, we see how your health assessment was when the policy was issued. And that's critical because now that gets back into what we were discussing earlier about matching the carrier with you. We're trying to bring two parties together. And also, again, with mortality tables growing out, some of those, the health assessment, you actually could get a better rating today because of lengthening life expectancies. So if your health's the same, it might, again, actually be better because the carriers are allowing for more pricing bands to bring your costs down. And what does that do? It makes the policy you have now that much uglier and that much more expensive. All the more reason, again, to review.
I tell you what, I saw a case about 30, 40 days ago. The client was Table B back 4 years ago. I looked at his Part 2, the medical part of your application, and you can see that for yourself. This is the answers you gave on the application. Right. And I looked at that and I said, that carrier is not really the carrier that should have been matched up to this case. So I just sent the Part 2 for an informal, just a quick look by the underwriter. Should I submit this case to you? You guys are much more benevolent in this case because that person should have never gotten a Table B. They could have gotten Standard Plus or maybe even Preferred. The only we'll know is a full app. But right now, yes, I do encourage you to send it. I've had other times where an underwriter says, no, Steve, it's actually been a deteriorating issue, and I don't think you'd be able to win on that.
Yeah.
But I say, why not?
You just brought up a great point, too. We have underwriters in our back office that screen your health assessment, that Part B we call it, prior to going into formal underwriting. Because if you get a decline from a carrier, a formal decline, that's like a brand on MIB, Medical Information Bureau, that that could scar your insurability, because for another carrier that caters to the impairment that we're having a little trouble with would have given you a standard rating. Well, we don't make the mistake of submitting you to the carrier that was going to give you a decline, because we review, we're reviewing your entire policy, but we review that health assessment, and we already know which carriers are going to be more benevolent in giving you a medical offer. But we know that before we go into formal underwriting. So you get your first offer is the best offer, most cases.
One of the things that we do in a policy review that I'm in shock that most people don't do is we gather information on business succession planning and estate planning. I need to know who owns what. So I know, look at a life insurance contract, it could be owned by an irrevocable life insurance trust. I need to see the trust doc, not myself as an attorney, but we have carriers that have high advanced teams that have attorneys and CPAs on who review this to make sure that the ownership and beneficiary issues are right. But here's the biggest thing, and I just want to say this to my friends, good friends in the banking and the trust department industry, because I've been friends with you and you guys know I've been doing this for a long time on the air. The liability, you have a huge fiduciary responsibility to overlook all the assets that your client has. Life insurance is an asset now. They classify this personal property. It needs to be reviewed. If that policy is defaults or is faulty in any way, or the insurance hasn't been upgraded, actually you're liable for that policy under your fiduciary obligation. So if I'm looking at a bank or a trust officer today, or maybe an attorney that's doing this oversight view, this is an area that needs to be kept up. Most people take care of the security side of this issue, assets under management, mutual funds, ETFs, REITs. But over here on the life insurance side of this issue, this is an asset. And especially for estate planning, it can be a monster asset. It needs to be reviewed.
Yes, and guess who's best qualified to review it? The life specialist, not the estate planning attorney, not the team leader or the head of trust services at the bank. They know it needs to be reviewed. They have the liability, but you got to have a life agent. We know better than anybody. And so that's why estate planning attorneys love us, because we take that monkey off their back by reviewing their book of business.
It's really important for us to always try to cherry pick the people who have an area of expertise so that we can actually make sure that that person's reviewing it. So if it's a doc, we're not going to be doing that. We're not attorneys. We're going to have physicians look at it. We're not physicians. Right. We have people that look at every arena and area of a contract, especially the bigger they are, because they're going to have trust work and documents. And lastly, on this subject, beneficiaries, make sure the beneficiaries are right and ownership is right. IRS determines all taxable events on the basis of not beneficiary, but actually on the basis of ownership.
Yeah, and since we're talking about trust and want to appeal to the wealthy consumer out there, you may be very educated and you have a team and you're paying for these high-fluting attorneys, and you may say, Bob, they handle all that stuff. don't be too intimidated by that, because when it comes down to it, life insurance is about a health assessment on the insured, and to clear away all the all the complex documentation. I'm talking about people with substantial estates. The review comes down to that medical assessment of the insured's health. Okay, so in that sense, it's not rocket science, but you need a life specialist to do it. And so the insured, even though may not own the policy, okay, and there's a trustee in another city maybe who's really busy, you have every right to call that person and say, hey, let's have the policy reviewed. I'm telling you, they're going to let you do it, and you're going to be helping them out, and you don't have to do any of the work, because the list of things that Steve said that we need to collect, guess what? You don't have to do it. That's my job. All you need to do is authorize us, and we'll report back to you on what your options are, and then you make the call.
Well, I want to thank Bob for sharing this series of most policy reviews in and money saved. And keep in mind, before moving forward with any of the ideas on our show, always check with your tax consultant, legal counsel, or financial advisor. And if you're doing a review, Bob's team is one of the top ones in the country. Let them look at it. You've been watching Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game.